Welcome to Born to Be Free program, where you're free to love God, others, and yourself. My name is LaTara Robertson, and today we have a great show planned for you. We're here today with Candace Hooker. How are you doing today, Candace?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
I'm glad that you're here today. We're going to have a great show lined up for you guys. So today, I just wanted to ask you, Candace, just to start off, what do you do with Born to Be Free?
Well, I do a number of different things at Born to Be Free. One of my main roles is I am the secretary for the general board and the executive board. I also help out with a lot of the events. I'm on the planning committees for events such as Rubies Among Rhinestones, our Freedom Fest program, and really just anything that needs to be done. I try to be a part of it. It's a great organization.
Okay, how did you actually become a member of Born to Be Free?
Well, I actually was introduced to Born to Be Free by one of my best friends. I wonder who that is?
Oh, that's me.
Yes. As you know, you invited me to a women's conference, and I actually invited my cousin to come along with, and we had an awesome time. It was so uplifting, it was so encouraging, and it was really great to just be around like-minded young women our age. And ever since then, we loved it, and I just wanted to be a part of it.
I know that I have personally grown a lot being Born to Be Free, and it's helped me in just other areas of my life. How would you say it's done that for you, like in ministry?
Oh, wow. I think that I have been blessed in a lot of ways by being a part of the Born to Be Free organization. I think one of the biggest things that has really impacted me is just getting me out of my comfort zone and getting me out of my shell. I think you remember when we worked at the same company together, I was very quiet, very reserved, very shy. I didn't talk to anyone, and I'm not afraid to say this now because I've matured from this, but I used to come to work, I'd be in my corner, I'd finish my work in about 4 hours out of my 8-hour day, and then most of the time I was asleep at my desk. So, you know, I didn't step out of my comfort zone. I didn't really socialize a lot with people until we became friends, and we came on the same team. And when I became a part of Born to Be Free, it was interesting because I kept being put in positions where I had to be in front of people and talk to people. And our president, Priscilla Brooks,
Yes.
She kept asking me to come up in front of the group and pray or to introduce or talk about Born to Be Free. And I was always like, why does this lady keep asking me to talk in front of people when I don't even talk? But the more that happened and I got pushed to the forefront and really being in front of people, I learned how to, number one, get over myself and get more comfortable with just being out there and in front of people and not afraid to just use what God has given me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I feel like I have gotten that same thing from being a part of this organization. Yes. Definitely have developed a lot of friendships and relationships and grown a lot personally and spiritually. Like, how do you think, I know you talked about with work, how you would be at work and you would fall asleep and you just kind of like stayed to yourself. But how do you think that not just the organization, but like how you're growing spiritually, how that is affecting you in your everyday life?
Well, I think one thing that I have learned to do, which has been partially because I've been a part of the Born to Be Free organization, but also just growing in my personal walk, is learning that I don't have to compartmentalize my faith into just one particular area, but instead allowing my faith and my relationship with God to be included in every aspect of my life. So one thing for me with work and that I've really tried to pride myself on is having integrity and being honest about my work that I do and not allowing the culture of the company that I work for to dictate how I behave myself. And so sometimes what that means is, and I've had examples of this before, where I may not necessarily always be fitting the mold of what an employee needs to do in order to be at the top and to be successful. But I also know what God expects of me and what boundaries and what lines I shouldn't cross and what values and morals that I shouldn't compromise just because I work in corporate America.
That's a great way of looking at it. I know that you've been through a lot of changes, good and bad, which I think all of us go through. All of us have twists and turns that we're not expecting. Like, how would you say, and that growing and even realizing, okay, having to be flexible and the boundaries of things not being what we think they should be, how would you say that has affected your move going forward? Like, okay, how to deal with change, you know, how to deal with, okay, well, this isn't the plan. I know initially you wanted to be a journalist. That's actually what you went to school for. And then you got into mortgage, you know, and you're doing this right now today. So like, how do you deal with change? Like, how has there been something that has become a part of your testimony?
Absolutely. I think one thing that I've definitely learned just in life and through all the changes that I've had is that you can't put yourself and your skills in a box and limit what you can do, because a lot of people think, okay, for instance, I went to school for journalism, and so everybody would naturally think that if you have a journalism degree, then you're going to go out and you're going to go and work for a newspaper, work for a TV show. But when I decided to start working at a mortgage company because I had graduated, I didn't have really very many job opportunities in the field that I had gotten a degree in. And so I had student loans that all of us are familiar with that needed to be paid. And so I needed a job, and I needed a good paying job, and I needed it now. So, you know, you take what you can get. But one thing that I did learn was I can still leverage the skills that I developed when I got my journalism degree and translate that into wherever I am on the job. So for me, how I was able to excel in the career path that I was in was being a good writer. Any job that you're at, you have to know how to communicate. You have to be a good communicator. And you have to recognize your audience and who you're talking to, and understand that there are certain things that you might be able to say to your colleague who's on the same level than you versus if you're talking to your manager, if you're talking to an assistant vice president or a vice president. So I used those skills, and as a journalism major, some people would call it being curious, but I'll be honest, I mean, some of it is we just straight nosy. Journalists are we like to know what's going on. We want to know the why, and so you learn how to ask a lot of questions. And so in my job, part of my job was you had to learn how to ask questions. You had to learn how to be able to pull out information from people and work with different kinds of people. So even though I wasn't writing for a newspaper, and even though I wasn't, you know, sitting behind a desk in a TV broadcast, I was still using my journalism skills. It was just in a different arena.
Yeah. I know this is something that most people, when they meet you, they might not know immediately, but within 5 to 15 minutes of knowing her, you're going to know she is really funny. Do you consider yourself a comedian? I think that you do consider yourself to be a comedian.
I don't really look at myself as a comedian, but it's so funny because, like, people always be like, oh, you should be a comedian. But the thing is, and I always tell people, I'm like, I can't be funny at the drop of a dime. It's something that has to just happen organically and naturally. Like, if something happens and I got something quirky or smart or funny to say, I'm usually going to say it. But it's not like I go home after work and I'm like, okay, let me write down like 10 jokes that I want to make sure I get out.
But I don't think any comedian initially, I don't think they all sit down just writing it out. I think it all comes naturally, and it definitely comes naturally to you. And how would you say, like, do you think that even now, like, as you're beginning to walk into your ministry, like, do you utilize that now when you are speaking?
Oh yeah, because I think one thing for me was in the beginning, when I first started being in front of groups of people and talking, I was very nervous and I was very self-conscious. And so everything was about perfection, and there was never any room for mistakes. And so that was a lot of pressure. And honestly, it was unnecessary pressure because we have to give ourselves grace and know that we can make mistakes. But sometimes you have to learn how to just laugh at yourself and not take everything so seriously. So I eventually just got to the point where I'm like, well, you know what? People keep asking me to come and speak in front of people and lead things, and I don't think it's ever going to stop. And I mean, I can say no, but then they still find a way to make me get up in front of people and do things. So I'm like, I just need to kind of just learn to just laugh at myself and have fun.
Yeah, and just be yourself.
Yeah.
Definitely. You're definitely one of the best people that I know. Like truly one of the best people in the world that I know. I couldn't actually count on my hand how many times I've had some conversation with you where you have lifted me up, whether it was with some moment where it's really serious and I'm really sad, and you have lifted me up either with a laugh or a moment of just, hey, we're gonna pray right now. And I wanna say something to that as in being friends. I thank God for our friendship, but is there anything that you would say to someone who, I know I get a lot that you and Candace have an amazing friendship. And we have people who are kind of jealous of our friendship because we are so close. And I love it. I do. I love our friendship. I love how close we are as sisters. I told her we are like twins from heaven, and then God just sent us down to different mothers. But like, what would you say to that? Because I get fielded that question a lot. Like, well, how did y'all develop that type of friendship?
I think for me, and with a lot of my experiences, have a lot to do with learning what things aren't to discover what things actually should be. Okay. So, like for me, like growing up, it was like, in my mind, I felt like, oh, I had a lot of friends. But then when I really thought about it, a lot of those friendships were very short term and didn't really last a very long time. And the nature of those relationships weren't really conducive to what a real friendship is supposed to be like. And so I kind of went through that phase where I had to learn what's an actual healthy friendship. And do you settle for a relationship for the sake of saying you have a relationship, or do you strive for something that's healthy and for something that's meaningful? Because I've got a lot of people that I've called my friends, but then when I stop and I look back over the years and think about, well, how many memories do I have with them? How many of them have actually been with me at my lowest of low points? I realize that I can probably count those on one hand. Yeah. And it is kind of the equivalent of when you go on Facebook, you have like 100 plus friends, but then it's like, how many of those people do you literally talk to offline on a regular basis? Probably maybe a handful or so. So for me, it's like, when I find something that is real and genuine, I appreciate it and I thank God for it. And I try to preserve that, because friendship today is really few and far between. Yeah.
So my last question to you is there any advice you would give to anyone, male or female, and just breaking off being shy and being just, caving into yourself? Not so much caving into yourself, but kind of getting lost in yourself and having a fear of stepping out. Is there any advice that you would give to anyone?
I think this may sound like a little intense to say, but honestly, you got to get over yourself. Mm-hmm. I think that sometimes, especially people who are shy, what happens is when we're afraid to come out of our shell, we start looking at everybody else who's different from us and on a different spectrum. And as kind of like self-preservation, we justify the fact that we're shy and we're withdrawn. And we look at everybody who's not as being, sometimes as, well, they're just conceited, or they're self-centered, or they're narcissistic and stuff. But sometimes it can also be on the other end of the spectrum. And I'll give a prime example. When I was in middle school, I hardly talked at all.
Yeah.
And like my teachers, like I was a great student, but my teachers were concerned, and they would tell my mom that she doesn't really socialize very much. Mm-hmm. And I always kept to myself, and the only time I talked was literally, if you spoke to me, I would say something to you. And I remember one day I was just walking down the hallway, and of all people was a hall monitor, and she came up to me and she was like, and I'm a middle school student at this, and she comes up to me and she's like, you're really shy, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, I guess, yeah,
well,
answering like a shy person would answer. And she's like, well, sometimes being really shy is also a form of being kind of self-centered. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, and it was weird because I was in 7th grade, but it was weird because I thought about it. But I also realized realized, I'm like, you know what, there actually is some truth to that, because the thing about it is, if you lack confidence in yourself, you're just focused on yourself in a different way than somebody who is conceited or someone who is arrogant. And at the end of the day, when you really, really think about it, everybody kind of has the same goal. Everybody wants to be accepted. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to feel validated. And you just have to kind of get over yourself, because what will happen is eventually you will get to a point in your life where you'll look back and you'll realize, I haven't lived. I haven't really enjoyed what God has given me for my life, because I've always been so worried about what other people are going to think if I step out and I do something new, and if I fail or if I mess up. And it's just like, you can't, that's not a way to live. God says he wants you to have life, and he wants you to have life abundantly. You can't have abundant life if you're just sitting around wishing you could do things when you actually can step out and do those things. So, long story short, get over yourself.
Thank you for joining our program today. If you would like to be a part of the Born to Be Free program, please go to our website at www.born2BFree.com. That's www.born2BFree.com. Thank you and have a great weekend.
We hope you enjoyed the program. Would you like to be free? Well, just say this prayer with me and mean it. Repeat after me. Dear God, I believe Jesus Christ is your son, and that he died and rose for my sins. Forgive me, Lord, for all I have done wrong, and be Lord of my life. Amen.
Born to Be Free is a 501c3 charitable nonprofit organization. If you would like to contribute to Born to Be Free, please go to www.born2befree.com, Cash App, or scan the QR code. We appreciate your support.